with Kirby Anderson.
Yesterday, I talked about some of the tests Glenn Beck proposes in his new book, Propaganda Wars. The first three are the liar-liar test, the what is a woman test, and the egg-throwing gorilla test. If you don't know what those are, you might consult the transcript for yesterday's commentary. His fourth test is the bias test. People and institutions are more likely to cite facts that support their ideological or religious views. If a secular liberal news source reports something favorable to conservatives or Christians, it is likely to be true. The fifth test he calls the bloodthirsty tyrant test. If someone supports or calls for violence, you should not trust that information. The mainstream media has frequently downplayed the violence and threats from Antifa. He argues that if you think your cause is so righteous that it justifies burning cities down, then you shouldn't trust that source. Another test is the original source test. This test is more difficult because you shouldn't always take at face value a statement that isn't a first-hand account. It takes time and patience to find the original source. Glenn Beck devotes a few pages to show how the false story of 500 people who died in a hospital in Gaza was repeated verbatim by multiple outlets. A final test is the crazy uncle test. Along with Christmas carols and Thanksgiving turkeys, one American holiday tradition is getting trapped by a completely absurd conversation with a crazy uncle. Glenn Beck suggests we treat the entire social media industry as though it is a crazy uncle. You will need wisdom and a degree of skepticism to navigate the propaganda wars in the 21st century. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For a free copy of Kirby's booklet, A Biblical View on Loneliness, go to viewpoints.info/loneliness. That's viewpoints.info/loneliness.
I'm Rick Scarborough, and this is my take. Dan Hart, senior editor at the Washington Stand, wrote, "The American dream is alive and well illustrated for the world to see in the remarkable rise of J.D. Vance." He went on to say, "In recent years, many of America's intellectuals, prognosticators, and the public in general have declared the American dream dead. The left has convinced a large segment of society that Americans of color are inherently disadvantaged, despite America electing a black man to the most powerful office in the world twice. For many, at least economically, the dream has begun to fade. Still, the remarkable rise of J.D. Vance serves as an example of how the American dream is alive and well. If you haven't watched the movie of J.D. Vance's life story, which he wrote, Hillbilly Eulogy, watch it. I'm Rick Scarborough, and that's my take."
Appreciate you listening to Disciples View. We stand here on the shoulder of giants. First of all, we have an audience of one. That's God Almighty, and a family of many. That's all of you, particularly people who pay and to donate money tax deductible to AFR to help us continue the mission on these 180 radio stations. Where Brother Don had this vision. God said, here's how to get it done, gave him this plan. And in that process, he met people like Brother Jerry Lawson, who's with us on a Disciples View today. Brother Lawson, welcome to Disciples View. I'm Todd Herman.
Thank you, and it's good to be here.
Is it okay if I call you Jerry?
It is fine. Jesus said, just call me Jesus.
Very good. I got a laugh out of the story of the Christmas buttons and this culture that we're in, even where I live. This is a pretty churched region. I live in North Idaho. I jokingly call it the high mountains of free America. And people are pretty free with Merry Christmas up here, although a few stragglers still want to say Happy Holidays. But tell us the story of the Christmas buttons, because I think it's a great story. It says so much about you and Brother Don.
Well, I go back to about 20 years ago when Bill O'Reilly, he caught my attention in a program when he said that there is a war out there on Christmas, and I hadn't even thought about it. But anyway, that thought lodged in my heart, and I started asking around different places, and sure enough, people were being told you can't say Merry Christmas. We have to say Happy Holidays or something like that. And it caused an anxiety, and yes, it aggravated me. And I thought, Lord, what can I do to push back? And if you ask the Lord for something, I mean, if it's in His will, He's going to give it to you. And immediately I was drawn to Mr. Wildman and his Christmas buttons. And so I started getting Christmas buttons, and I started passing them away. And I knew for me, it had become a witness and a ministry.
Yeah, and that witness and ministry has continued on as a just real easy way to remind people of what this season means, or what it means at least to people who hold Jesus firmly in their heart. And talk about how we can participate in this and how we can take advantage of the free shipping right now to get these Christmas buttons.
Well, you can get 20 buttons for $10. That's an excellent buy. And, of course, you just go online to AFA, and you can see all of their resources and things like that. And the free shipping is this month, or this week. But I tell you what, there's a lot of people are calling in and getting Christmas buttons. It thrills me to know that churches are calling in and getting buttons to pass out in their community. But if you've got Christ in your heart, pin him to your chest and let people see Jesus not only on the outside, but it stimulates you on the inside to make sure you live a life that honors and pleases him.
I think the laugh that I got out of this and why I found it so thrilling is at every single turn, the world underestimated what God would do through this network and through Brother Don and people like you. And I just get the biggest laugh out of putting myself in the head of some elite Manhattanite when Brother Don started to go out and talk to the media about the stuff they were airing, and we're going to help you stop this. And who's this preacher from Mississippi? And all of a sudden they had to make these changes because of what God did. And then these buttons, well, who cares? People wearing buttons, but this has actually changed. I know that you probably have stories of people who've worn these buttons and seen the delight in other people's faces when they see, this person does worship Jesus. They do recognize this is the birth of Christ.
Absolutely. This is a beautiful building that I'm sitting in right now here in Tupelo, Mississippi.
Yes, it is.
And let me tell you something. When Brother Don started talking about the buttons, I think a lot of people just laughed at him. But he knew when God inspired him, whether it was to start writing articles or this button, he followed God's inspiration. And if God's behind it, I don't know what can stop it. And so this building, I have been told that it was the buttons that paid for this building. And it's not a joke anymore. God really inspired Don to do it. And I tell you what, he's been an inspiration to me.
Well, goodness, and people have not been to the building. I've only been there for the first time just a few months ago. And it's a great stewarding of funds, first of all, but it is also a building of worship. The presence of Christ is everywhere, from the design to the cross in the lobby to the fact that there's devotionals every morning. I didn't know the buttons had built it, but I encourage people to go buy the buttons. Go to afa.net. It's free shipping this week at the Resource Center. Get these buttons. Brother Jerry said, look, Jesus is in your heart. Wear them on your lapel, wear them on your shirt. And churches, get these and pass these out. Anything else you want to let people know about today, Brother Jerry?
Well, I take the buttons, and I have found a source for magnets, and I always put a magnet on the back of my buttons because I have ladies that'll say, well, my crepe blouse, I don't want to punch a hole in it. Well, I got a magnet for you. But where there's a problem, God's always got a solution.
I love that. But appreciate you coming on, Brother Jerry. Thank you very much for making the time to visit with us. It's Brother Jerry Lawson. Appreciate you, sir.
Thank you, and look forward to seeing you in heaven.
Yeah, I appreciate that too. In the way of the world, pardon me, it's so unprofessional. In the way of the world, in what we're watching in our world, there's something I came across in my study of what I believe is Satan's other attack on us. There's definitely, obviously, the spiritual warfare, very real. We all know this. And the Bible gives us a whole series of ways to be prepared to fight that. That's the armor of God. That's the power that Jesus delegated to us to rebuke demons, to reject them, to renounce their work, to work together with other Christians to do that, to have hands laid upon us, to be prayed over, to take thoughts captive and check all spirits, a whole series of things. Satan has another way, I believe, he's attacking humans. And it has to do with this just clear and evident attack on our bodies. I've been sharing with you, of course, the lies of transgenderism, and I'll start there, but I want to get into a comparison, a side-by-side comparison of what happens when people plan and give birth at home versus planning and giving birth in hospitals. And this comes out of Canada. A woman named Jennifer Margulies has written about this. Jennifer is a fascinating lady who's written a lot of books about vaccine safety. So she's a heretic. She came upon her interest in vaccine safety, honestly, as a parent of a newborn who was told, you need to give 27, 29 shots to this baby right now. She was an investigative journalist and sat back and said, that seems extreme. So before she would agree, she did some research. So we'll get to this in a second. Jennifer's story is fascinating. This article is fascinating about giving birth at home, but let me start here. I've been sharing with you the lawsuit against this gender jacker. That's a phrase I use, hijacking gender. I do not think this woman qualifies as a doctor any longer. I think she stopped being one. I with no hesitation, and I mean this, I pray about this. I have no hesitation comparing this woman to Dr. Joseph Mengele in the Nazi camps, none at all. Because of the level of harm she's allowing to be done through her, because of her pursuit, apparently, of money far ahead of the lives of these children. She's come into the notice of a lot of us who've been fighting against the lies of transgender ideology. I've been doing it for almost 10 years. J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter series, came upon this probably about 4 years ago, and she dove straight in. And she has been on the side of truth in this. She's not a Christian. She does know about Jesus. In fact, there are books and chapters in the Harry Potter series that she fully admits are completely inspired by the Bible. Maybe God is calling her through this. Maybe God is using this to allow her to see his face by comparison to the face of evil. She wrote about this so-called doctor, Joanna Olsen Kennedy. She wrote this on Twitter. The doctor who chose not to publish a study on puberty blockers because it showed no improvement in participants' mental health is the very same Joanna Olsen Kennedy who's being sued by a young woman put on blockers at 12, given testosterone at 13, and a double mastectomy at 14. And indeed, according to media reports, according to the lawsuits, according to the written record, when this report came out, looking at the results on puberty blockers being shoved into kids' bodies, the results were not good. Not just no improvement, but their bodies inalterably changed. Their IQs, in all likelihood, held back, sometimes dropped by 10 points. You've heard Joanna Olsen Kennedy, who I refer to on equal footing with Joseph Mengele. The motive might have been different. She's not killing people immediately, but she's sterilizing them. And she has admitted this. She decided with others that we can't possibly let this report out because it shows what we're doing doesn't help. She is a doctor at Children's Hospital in Los Angeles. She still has her medical license. Think of this. She had in her possession a report she helped see to fruition that showed that she was not helping kids. Not only did she hide the report, she continued to do the thing that was not helping kids. If that doesn't communicate the need to see her medical license taken away, what does? If you took your car in to a facility, a mechanic, and the mechanic said, here's what's going to help your car, and he did something very expensive and inalterable to your car, and it didn't help, and then he did that to 1,000 other people, and there was a lawsuit, that mechanic's business would be gone. He'd be cost an inordinate amount of money, but hospital systems have so embedded themselves in government that it is nearly impossible to see a lawsuit to fruition. because they hide behind a standard of negligence, which allows them to toss everything over to their insurance company. Their insurance company can cover this. It's just, we